Riley Weiwei, what do you think is going on with MicroStrategy? Nothing. Nothing's going on with MicroStrategy. I look at MicroStrategy and Bitcoin very much the same. I mean, MicroStrategy is totally dependent on Bitcoin for sure, but they're not necessarily going to be connected all the time. And I think there is actually opportunity there for arbitrage. If you can figure out the average NAV, the net asset value of the company compared to Bitcoin, it's going to go up and down. And if you can arbitrage that, I think there's a big opportunity there. But you have to keep in mind here with MicroStrategy and Saylor, he loves the volatility. His investors love the volatility of it. So he doesn't give a shit what the stock price is today. He's focused on one thing, getting as much Bitcoin as he can. And I would say that he's done a pretty damn good job of that over these last few months and years. MicroStrategy has 400,000, more than that, more than 400,000 Bitcoin. More than 400,000 Bitcoin. No country, well, maybe the US, maybe a country in the UAE, but no company is ever going to surpass that. I don't even think anybody's going to come close, because you have to keep in mind here that the reason why I'm so excited about MicroStrategy, and again, before I go any further here, I should preface with this, is that if you have any money outside of the traditional system, that should be 100% in Bitcoin. Cold storage, you hold it, the keys to it. Nobody else has access to it. There's no third-party risk there. Nobody can rug you. That's where your money goes to. But if you do have any capital trapped in the old system, I think MicroStrategy is a far superior play than like a Bitcoin ETF or a mining company or anything, or especially a non-Bitcoin company. But the reason why it makes so much sense to me to hold MicroStrategy is because of that. Nobody's going to come close to the Bitcoin that they have. And the implications of that are substantial. Because you have to figure out here, even with Apple, Google, Meta, Tesla, Nvidia, they have enough cash to buy Bitcoin today. They could surpass MicroStrategy at current prices though. But as soon as they start buying a bunch of Bitcoin, that's going to drive up the price for one, just inherently. But it's also going to send signal to the rest of the market that they're going to be buying Bitcoin, which is going to create more demand. Supply is not going to change. And so that's why Saylor himself has been putting out his open source material. He's been giving presentations. He's been on the mainstream news every week. And he's actually been sharing his playbook with other companies. Why? Because he knows that as soon as they start buying Bitcoin, as soon as a company like Apple or Google or Meta would start buying Bitcoin, that's just going to drive up the price of Bitcoin. And what does that do? It drives up the price of the company's value of MicroStrategy. So every company, every country that adopts Bitcoin going forward is good for MicroStrategy because it bumps up the price of Bitcoin, and then inherently bumps up the price and the value of MicroStrategy. And it's like they call it a flywheel effect, because everything that happens every time a new company or country adds Bitcoin to their balance sheet, it makes MicroStrategy's company more valuable. So I don't look at the day-to-day price or the week-to-week price with MicroStrategy. I'm holding that for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I see it I think of it very much like Bitcoin, where it's going to go up, it's going to go down. Every time it goes down, you try to buy some. And it's an asset that you want to hold for the long term. So I don't get too concerned with, I don't do any leverage plays. I don't do anything like that. I just buy a MicroStrategy, hold it, and probably I would guess a year from now or less, there's probably going to be another stock split. Last time they did a stock split at 1,200, I believe, maybe 1,100 US dollars. And I think that they'll probably do it again when we get to that price in the coming months and years. So don't try to like go all in on it or anything. That doesn't make any sense, but get a couple shares for sure. Because in a year from now, even if you get 2 or 3 shares in MicroStrategy, which is what I did initially, that turns into 20 or 30 shares after they do a stock split. And for me, because nobody's ever going to be able to catch MicroStrategy with Bitcoin, if Bitcoin becomes what we think it's going to, the world reserve asset, where everything's repriced by Bitcoin and it's very collateralized, and used throughout the financial system, if they have the most Bitcoin, they're the most valuable company. And if nobody can catch them in terms of Bitcoin, they're going to stay the most valuable company. So once they get to number one on the stock exchange, which they will, barring something crazy that happens, they're probably going to stay there for our lifetime. And if you think about this is the kind of stuff that's like, it just makes so much sense. Because they got into QQQ, which means they're going to have a bunch of passive buyers. They're going to get into the S&P 500, which is going to bring in more passive buyers. And those buyers are going to be holding that Bitcoin, the Microstrategy shares, forever. And it's just going to keep going, because the higher you climb in the S&P in the rankings, the more automatic inflows you have from the funds and the ETFs and the indexes and stuff like that. So it's just they're just going to keep more and more demand, and Saylor is just going to make this thing as volatile as possible. So there's going to be, I see it as the best way to do it. He wants to make it as volatile as possible. And so if you're aware of that, you don't get mad or anything when the price goes down. You actually take that as an opportunity to buy more MicroStrategy shares. So that has been MicroStrategy, Unexpected MicroStrategy Friday. That was a really long answer.